Hey, welcome to another episode of the Coffee Break Podcast, where our mission is to share business ideas, practices, and strategies while we enjoy our cup of coffee. And today, we're going to have a conversation with two of my friends who we have conversations with quite frequently around operating our businesses. We're going to jump into the topic of why you would want to have an industry peer group, the value, the things that you've learned, the pros, the cons, all of the things around it. We're going to discuss that today on the podcast. So grab a cup of coffee and join us for this conversation.
We got so much to say. We got a podcast to make. We're sipping on lattes, and it's time for a coffee break. It's time for a coffee break. Oh, yeah.
Well, hey guys, welcome. Thank you very much for being here. You got your coffee, Lars, I see.
Absolutely. We have Starbucks in Canada now.
Oh, boy. Well, we have real coffee down here in America, but you've got Starbucks, and it looked like Tony had his own coffee there as well.
I actually have the coffee place that you told me about in Charlotte. I ordered some beans from.
Sugar Creek.
Friend worked. Yes, Sugar Creek is the blend today. So.
Look at that. Had its own, made his own pour over at the house today. Well, I appreciate you guys joining us. So on my immediate left here is Tony Hokanson from Assured Security up in Minneapolis, Minnesota. And then to his right is Lars Johnston from Calgary Lock and Safe A up in Calgary, Alberta, Canada. Thank you guys for taking time out of your schedules to join us today.
Thank you.
Glad to be here.
So we have a lot of conversations very similar to this. Being on a video call and having conversations around our businesses is becoming the norm these days. But I wanted to kind of step back. I was talking to Tony about this episode today, but I was talking to him about it yesterday, and he said, "Is this very similar to the episode that we recorded in Texas a couple of years ago?" And I said, "You know what? I guess." From a sense that we're all three having a conversation together, yes, but I want to kind of take it to a whole nother level. So I want to back up to that. It was March of it wouldn't have been 2019. It would have been 2019.
18.
Yeah.
18 was Texas.
Yeah.
19.
Yeah.
19?
I think it was 19. It feels like it was a long time ago.
It's 10 COVID years away.
We were all in San Antonio, Texas, and we recorded an episode there at a conference that we were at, and we were talking about how you know if you're winning. So we were talking about scorecards and sharing information. So again, that felt like 10 years ago, but just a few, I guess 18 or 20 months ago or something like that, we had that conversation. So let's kind of pace ourselves since then. And what have we learned? So, Lars, I'll let you jump this off. Since then, we've had a couple of other conversations, a couple of other meetings around kind of building a business peer group. And so that's going to be kind of the topic of today. How did this whole idea come about, and what have your takeaways been so far?
Oh, well, it does feel like it's been years since we had that conversation. We've... Since basically COVID, I guess, started, I think it was in March, we've got an industry group that we've put together that, we discuss all that plagues us really and everything that's helping us win. It's really nice because, when you first get started, first of all, it's kind of awkward because you're all on a camera and, it's not everyone in a room and people aren't comfortable with that, but, we're really, really encouraging everyone to share and be on camera and see face to face. It's really turned into a group based on, trust and free flowing information and communication. It's really remarkable. Even if we're discussing a topic that doesn't relate, like us being in Canada, a lot of the stuff that we've discussed and some of the government measures going on in the US, don't apply to us. However, there's always something that someone brings up that, it's like a light bulb goes off in my head. Oh yeah, we can do something like this in our own world. It's been shockingly successful, is how I would describe it. It's not just, pretty good. It's been really, really quite good, as beneficial as anything that we do consistently.
Tony, what about you? What have you, since March of 2019 until, we're now in November of 2020, How has that evolved for you? What have been the lessons that you've learned through really in an intensive peer group?
To me, it's just overall been really helpful. Helpful is a word that sticks out to me. We've done different peer groups. Lars and I are in another peer group that has also been very helpful. We started it through the MSC conference, I think now almost 3 years ago. And we met on a monthly basis. And it was just in general, having any sort of an industry peer group was helpful to bounce ideas off people. We're trying different things. How is this working for you? What do you guys do in this situation? To me, when COVID happened, there was so much stuff changing so rapidly that there was just so many things that we wanted to ask questions about. You guys both know I love asking questions. And it was a great platform to ask questions. And with so much changing so quickly, it's nice to know that you're not alone in making those decisions and asking people that are going through it with you, what are they doing and what have they learned from this? And just having a resource to help you through a time that things were changing so quickly.
So with that process, there's some encouragement, there's some helpfulness, and it really comes down to having the open, honest, and trust building conversations, right? And so I had looked up this inc.com article, 10 reasons to join a peer group, and it really outlines a lot of these things that we've talked about. Accountability, kind of a safe zone was one of them. They classify here a safe zone. When you're a CEO, it can be difficult or impossible to admit to your management team or board that you don't know something or that you may have made a mistake because everybody's counting on you. But a peer group is a safe zone where you can get a chance to talk through things in a confidential way where you don't have to look smart all the time. Mm-hmm. How have you seen that in play?
Yeah, trying not to look smart all the time. That's a challenge that we all have to battle every day. Sitting in a group like that, as Tony mentioned, we sit in a group. There's, I think, 5 or 6 companies that was involved in that one. There's about 10 or 12 with the one you're involved with, Chad. Businessmeeting.online. Quick plug there. But it's really nice. A couple things shocked me immediately. First of all, we sat through and we actually really talked about our companies, and we got just the 3 of us. We got somebody in Minnesota, we got somebody in North Carolina, and we got somebody in Calgary, Alberta, which is northern Montana. 3 companies that run independently, operate independently, different markets, different business models, and yet all remarkably similar. Mm-hmm. Having the same challenges, having the same wins, financially very similar, company size very similar. Like it was just, again, I'll use the word shocking how similar it is, which really, provides almost like that, you can let your shoulders down for a moment and say, I thought I was full of crap this whole time. I thought I was just making this stuff up as I went. And it turns out, everyone is, and we're all kind of all in the same boat. And once you get over that initial hurdle, it's been a relief because, they talk about, or Chad and you just mentioned, being at the top, so to speak. It's lonely because you have that vulnerability and you don't want to really just admit openly that you're guessing on a lot of the stuff and decisions that you're making. And then having these like-minded people that are also guessing kind of gives you some more confidence. Mm-hmm. That's certainly the biggest thing that I've taken from this experience.
Tony, what are your thoughts on that? You were getting ready to say something.
Yeah, I think that one thing that's been really helpful in our peer group is the diversity of experience as well. So although we all have very similar companies, we have a really good diversity. We have a company in the group that's 7 employees, and then we have a company in the group that's 64 employees that had upwards of 100 at one point. And then a couple in 20 range, a couple in the 40 range. So we have a really good mix of people. And no matter who you are in the group, you have something to obtain from one of the other business owners. And even the business owners themselves have different experience, different backgrounds. And surrounding yourself with people in a similar situation as you, but yet have someone that offers a different perspective on things, to me has been really valuable. And just seeing how others are doing it, how others are overcoming the challenges that they're faced, and they have a different viewpoint on it, and you can learn from them on that. So that's been my biggest takeaway, is having people as a resource that have, especially in someone in my situation who's been a business owner only for a couple of years, being able to talk and network with people that have owned businesses for 20, 30, 40 years and had different backgrounds to get to that point has been really valuable.
Yeah, it's a thing to build relationship with people that you can have that trust. And that's, we've had these conversations before around peer groups and why some work and some don't. And at the ultimate, I guess, end of it is it's building rapport with people like over a period of time. And, for the three of us specifically, we have been connected for a while, but the more and more and more information that we share, the more transparent that we share, the more trust gets built. And then I feel like you get the opportunity to grow farther. And so, I look back at the root of that being the trust building and the comfortability that says, you know what, if I do bring this problem to the table, I'm not going to be, I'm not going to be shamed because of it, because there's kind of a mutual trust. Like Lars says, all of us are kind of making it up at the same time. So then when you start to multiply that group and that group starts to become bigger and bigger, I've seen it happen because I've sat at the table with a lot of people, either virtually or, in person, where you come to a new group and everybody just kind of gets standoffish and very few people want to share any information or speak up because they're just still trying to fill out everybody. So the importance of creating that safe zone where you can continue to share and you can continue to communicate. And I think to a point, even with COVID, it forced us, a lot of us, into a whole new place where we weren't exactly sure what was going to happen. And so it forced us all to communicate at a more intensified level, more frequently. And so that trust got built at a faster pace where, we've got a group of, like you said, 15 businesses or whatever that probably would have taken a couple of years to get to that point. And we fast-tracked that in like 6 months, where we're talking about things and sharing things that nobody has shared in our industry for as long as any of us really remember. So that's, I think, a big thing on having a safe zone. The other one on here, another one of that they list, is emotional support. Just understanding that sometimes you're going through things. It was interesting. I was talking to somebody the other day and they said, you don't walk around here and tell people that you're overwhelmed. Like, that's just not something that you do, because if you say that, then everybody's going to flip out. And I was like, well, I understand that, but having people that you can share that with that's not going to flip out, that's not going to have concern, but can actually help you work through the process is a big thing as well.
Everyone's experiencing COVID and the impact in one way or another. Mm-hmm. And, it was like the stars aligned. If there's any positives that have come out of this whole situation, it's really having this group come together and say, man, I don't know how to handle this. Mm-hmm. Because everyone else in the world is also saying that. But it was, with the context that everyone in the group is in a relatively similar situation. It was a kind of a safe spot to just, throw some ideas. This is how we've handled it. This is what we're doing. Oh, well, did you guys run into this? Mm-hmm. Oh, we did. Yeah, because we did it, and just bouncing it back and forth. And even in our group, now that we've got that trust level, it's gotten to the point where we just openly share stuff. It's like, here's our policies, and just swap it over email or do whatever and build off it. And hey, we were going to add this. So mm-hmm. It's really been that spot for emotional support where, again, you can just be vulnerable and say, hey man, I have no idea how to handle this. What are you guys doing?
Just a reminder, you're listening to the Coffee Break Podcast. Also, we wanted to let you know that our team puts together a weekly blog post. You can find it at locdoc.net/blog. It's guaranteed to raise your IQ by 12 points or your money back. So it's pretty much a win-win. All right, back to the conversation.
I think to tie things back to a little bit to our conversation 20 months ago, it's been a great way to, I don't want to say measure if we're winning or losing, but to measure and see how we compare to others and what we're doing right and what we're doing wrong. When we talked 20 months ago, it's like, well, how do you know if we're winning or losing? We know if we're winning or losing based on how we've done year over year. But this is a great way to compare us to others in our industry. And I think that the trust that Lars hit on is really valuable because it's allowed us to openly share how we're doing within our business and see that, one person's doing well in this area. And why are they doing well in that area? How did they get to that point? One person's doing well in another area. How did they get to that point? And having a a barometer to see how you're doing has been really helpful, because in most businesses, you're not going to go knock on your neighbor next door and say, hey, show me your financial statements. But it's a little bit more comforting when A, it's someone you have trust with, and B, it's someone that, isn't going to be your competitor. So to me, that's been really nice to help with that, knowing how we're doing and giving us that measuring stick.
Two other things that are on this list of reasons to join a peer group, and really we kind of created one, but for the same reason, is one, to be able to look ahead, and another one is to work on the business rather than in it. And so, kind of moving away a little bit from the COVID situation, because I think we've all gone through that, but it again has opened up this unique opportunity to, I think, Tony, you really just led into this. It's the ability to almost open up the books very transparently and say, this is what we're doing, this is where we're doing, and now we're able to have that barometer and say, okay, here's the average across all these companies. Are you above or below? And then that starts to share, okay, hold on a second. What are the things that I need to tweak? Lars, I see that you're better in this area than I am. What are you doing differently here? Tony, I see that you're worse in this area than I am. Why is that the case, and how can I help you? That was a fun joke, Tony. I was just picking with you.
Phrased perfectly.
But so of those points, right? Looking ahead and working on the business rather than in the business. How has that transformed the way that you're working in your business from 20 months ago?
That's me.
Sure, go ahead, Tone.
One thing it's transformed me on is, just something I've learned from the group is the importance of accountability. But one thing the group has helped me with is actually holding myself accountable. We're focused in our business on holding everyone accountable, but as a business owner or a manager, a lot of times you don't have many people holding you accountable. So, one thing I think you've done a great job with in the group is talking about key takeaways and what are you going to do with this, and holding people accountable for actually doing what they say they're going to do. So to me, one of the big takeaways from that is just accountability, and making sure that you have someone else there holding you accountable, bouncing ideas off them, and having them hold you accountable for what you say you're going to do.
Yeah, and I would just echo that. It's a set time in my calendar every week that unless the walls are burning down, I'm going to be in this meeting, and it forces me more than anything just to really focus on some big picture stuff, mm-hmm. and hear about some of the stuff that is going on at Loc-Doc, some of the stuff that's going on with Assured, and some of the stuff we hear coming out of California with those guys down there. It gives you that motivation, mm-hmm. and kind of that little kick to say, okay, let's get going, because it's pretty easy to get comfortable and complacent, right? I talk about just comfort's the enemy of success, or whatever the saying is, and I found it gives me a nice little, hey, be better at what you're doing, and it's just that little challenge, and it's not like in an aggressive way, mm-hmm. but it's like in more of a supportive, and kind of gives you a little energy boost. That's certainly one of the biggest things it's done for me.
Well, it's interesting. You both hit on two of the things that are on the list. One, accountability. It's hard to be held accountable in your own business. I mean, it takes a lot of I guess, humility and transparency for that to happen. But when you're in a group of other folks that are in the same type of position, then it helps. You can say, "Hey, Lars, you said you were going to get this taken care of by this time. Why didn't you do it yet?" It's a lot easier to do that and put people in place. Also, when you make a commitment to do something before the next meeting, it pushes you on the timeline to make sure that happens. And the second thing was the motivation. And I want to kind of sit on that motivation thing for a few minutes, because I think that's probably one of the untapped diamonds in these types of groups. You got to understand that a lot of folks in leadership positions inside of organizations are very, very competitive by nature, right? And so, I joke around with our team here all the time because of those peer groups, because of the conversations that we have. Hey, we gotta beat these guys. We gotta win here. And I know you guys do the same thing in your organizations. And so you go, it just kind of creates a little bit additional motivation where you may become complacent to a point. Things are okay, things are good, but it just kind of stirs that a little more than normal and allows you to kind of take that and share it with your team. What are your guys' thoughts on that? And then we can kind of talk into some of the things that have motivated some people inside of our group that I have been very impressed with. But what are your thoughts on motivation and utilizing that within your own organizations?
Well, yeah, we, you guys know we talk to each other every day, and that I have a sense of humor about this stuff, but I frequently say that, we have to do this. Hey, I was talking to Chad. This is what they're doing. We have to do this just one step better and make it blue instead of green, right? That's an ongoing conversation in our company is, hey, these guys are doing that. And we've just got to do it a little bit better. But the motivation part of it, I mean, one of our core values is being a relentless learner. Mm-hmm. And I'm a firm believer in if you aren't learning, you're dying, right? If you're not getting better, you're getting worse. It's one or the other. And it's so easy to get complacent and just be okay with where you are. The motivation of seeing this, and, we sit together and Tony's talking about acquiring a company, or, Chad, you're developing your OMS, which is your internal CRM. Mm-hmm. And, these things are like, this is the kind of stuff. It's like, damn, now we got to get into this. What am I doing? Mm-hmm. I was out having lunch and these guys were grinding, and it gives me that motivation, which then gets passed on to the company. Mm-hmm. And as you know, I've started bringing in some of the other department heads and directors of our company onto these calls, mm-hmm. because it's something we haven't even touched on, but an untapped kind of motivation for them is, they get sick of my voice. They hear my voice all the time. They get sick of my mustache, right? At some point, I think
it might not just be them, by the way.
Everybody gets sick of the mustache.
Everyone gets sick of this mustache, but having this group, involving them into it, I know when they get off the call, they're like just yesterday, Janelle, our controller, was on the call, and she came off. She was fired up. She's like, "Oh, this is amazing. We're going to get right," and it meant something different coming from the group than coming from me. Mm. And using that as leverage. And then she fires up her team, and, you can just feel the electricity. And today I can see it on the internal chat. Everyone's on Slack and they're firing and ready to go because they had this motivation. And it just means so much more coming from someone that isn't me all the time.
Yeah, I want to second that, and then we'll jump over to Tony's perspective. We had, I guess I don't know who all was involved with it, but there was a coordinated call with most of our company, or with all of our companies that had. We were talking about inventory and some new inventory best practices, and the same thing happened. We had some folks on there from our organization, and they came back and just were able to implement some big changes very quickly because it just kind of gave a little bit of clarity. And one of the things that Sam told me was it was really exciting to have that conversation with other folks in my same position and see the areas where we're better and the areas where we're worse, so we know what we need to start working on and tweaking. That's very valuable. But so you see that at the leadership position, and then at every level down, when you create that environment, that peer group. So it's a peer group maybe just for business owners or leaders, and then you have one for your managers and for different areas, different departments, and now you're starting to share ideas at every level. So it's been very important.
Sorry, Tony. Go ahead.
I was going to say something very similar to that it gives you a reminder of what's possible. Seeing what others are doing, it kind of shows you what's out there to do and where, again, not to repeat what I said earlier, but going back to, are you winning or losing? And it's nice to be reminded if you're winning in certain areas, but it's also nice to see what else is out there, that what is attainable goal, and give you a pleasant reminder that you can achieve this.
It's common. What we've kind of created is a little consulting group, mm-hmm. right? That's what we've put together. Companies spend a lot of money to bring in consultants that do an excellent job. However, excellent job does usually come with an excellent price tag. What we've done is we've got industry specific best practice and brought them together to just have a conversation. And it is you don't miss the mark on context, because everyone is in the same role and talking about the same thing, talking the same language. And it's what you get accomplished in an hour or half an hour is is weeks with someone that isn't in the same context. There's no onboarding process, it's really been quite amazing.
Can you copy this key? That's a question we get asked about 3,422 times a year. And how can you actually be sure that the person who asked that question is supposed to get a copy of that key? Well, we think you should always know who can copy your keys to your business and your home, because it could be your neighbor, an old employee, a contractor, or even worse, your mother-in-law. At Loc-Doc Security, we believe in protected key systems, so you always know who has a copy of your key. To find out more, visit locdoc.net or stop by our Charlotte location. Loc-Doc Security, helping you protect your people and your property. Yeah, the active consulting and one of the items here is the fast track learning. You're really starting at a different place because you all are familiar when you're utilizing industry terminology or whatever, through the conversation, you at least have a commonality of what you're dealing with. So now you can really move past all the things that take a lot of time and burn up a lot of energy at the beginning, and you can really get to things that are majorly impactful because of that. It's interesting. So you have the motivation at a lot of different levels within your organization, and even such, tapping back into, I can tell you 20 months ago in our organization, we were very much hesitant on acquisition. It's not, I think we want to do this organically. We want to grow organically. And through conversations and learning and watching, and like you said, sitting around having a conversation, it's like, well, Tony just bought another business, and Lars just bought another business. Like, well, we got to figure this thing out. And over the past 20 months, we've acquired 2 businesses because of that, and learning through that process. And that's one of the, I think, a big side benefit of it is just that sharing of kind of alleviating some of the question marks, right? Some of those things that you're not quite sure, those known unknowns, but now you have this community where you've created some trust, so you understand that people aren't going to mislead you just because it's fun. They're actually invested in helping you become a better business owner, a better business leader, and a better person at the end of it.
Yeah, one of the things I really love about the groups that we sit on, like Glenn Younger, is I think all 3 of us would agree that Glenn's highly respected. When Glenn speaks, it's pin drop.
Yep.
I'll get my pen because I know gold's coming. But it's funny because the 3 of us whippersnappers, it's like, hey, this is my idea, I'm going to run with this is what we're going to do, and this is how we're going to roll it out. And you'll see Glenn kind of turn his head and look up a little bit, and it's like, uh-oh, I've screwed up. Because Glenn's like, well, this is a lovely idea, and I think it'd work. However, I've done this, and this is what So it's really, Tony touched on it earlier, having this just like the different generations almost, but everyone in a different place in their work career. And we think we're just the smartest guys in the world. And then the people that are the smartest people in the world sit there and just like, hold on, son, you're going to want to write this down.
Yeah. Uncle Glenn is one of my favorite things is he kind of looks sideways, and then he says, it occurs to me, and that's a nice way of saying you're a moron. Listen to what I'm saying. On this list, it says there's an old saying that wisdom comes from making mistakes. No matter what challenges or opportunities you may be facing in your business, someone else has seen it before, especially if the other members of your group run companies similar size to yours. That means by listening and learning from them, you can avoid making the errors they did while increasing the chance that you will make the most of the opportunities ahead of you. They classified that in there under the been there, done that section of a reason to join a peer group.
That's a pretty good list.
That sounds spot on.
Yeah, whatever Facebook page that came from, Chad, they knew what they were doing.
So, Chad, I'm interested to hear from you. I don't know if I'm allowed to ask a question, but I'm going to, not to your surprise. As someone, I know you've been in other peer groups that are non-industry peer groups. I'm curious to hear from you how being in an industry peer groups relate to being in a peer group that's non-industry related. I know you're in your Ontario leadership group and have some other groups that you're involved in. How do they compare and contrast? That's something I'm interested to hear, and I imagine some of our listeners would be as well.
Yeah, it's a very, very valid question. I would say that I wouldn't replace one for the other. And here's the reason why. A specific industry peer group, there's a lot of value to be gained from people that understand the industry the same way that you do, understand the ins and outs of it. There is a whole nother value set of benefits if you are in a peer group that is in with like-minded folks, but outside of your industry. And that's where we've talked about it before. When you're kind of in the same group of people and you're just circulating the same ideas over and over again, some of those things you're just recirculating the same things. When you take that into a different industry group, where there's a vast array of manufacturing or, different products and services that they're selling, they are dealing with similar yet very distinctly different situations. And so you can almost ingest new ideas and figure out, just kind of like what Lars was saying earlier, there's a lot of differences between the United States and Canada. But listening to what's going on in Canada, you can take some of those cues and figure out how it can be applicable to you. And the same thing, reverse. So when you're in a group with people outside with other industries, you can say, okay, I hear what you're saying, and I'm trying to figure out how to apply that to our organization. So for us, none of us are in manufacturing. We're all in installation service, right? And so. But I find a lot of value in watching and listening to business leaders in a manufacturing set because they are constantly working on efficiencies. So whereas their efficiency processes may not necessarily directly apply to what we do, there are cues that you can take from that and apply them to whatever it is that you're doing to create a better level of efficiency. So that is something very interesting to me. So I wouldn't trade one for the other. I think they both have their place if you have the capacity. That's all you have? That was your question?
That was it. I knew I was limited to one question. So.
Oh. Have you ever felt that, Lars? One question from Tony, and he just sat there.
Oh, actually, as you were responding, he was texting me.
Oh, he texted you a question as well?
Ask another question. Yeah, he's like, when we're done, I got the follow-ups, yeah.
Network value and scaling are two of the other listed reasons on this list here. How has your business changed from a scaling perspective? How have you grown your business over the past 20 months? Has it grown? I mean, obviously with COVID, there were a lot of us took a kind of a dip, but I think that all of us have grown over the past 20 months. Do you attribute that to anything through a peer group, or has that just been solely on your own?
I would say that goes beyond 20 months. I mean, our business has grown, I think, about 300% in the last 6 years. Some of that due to acquisition, some of that due to organic. But I would say that almost all of that 300% growth has been attributed to networking and talking to people, taking those ideas. I mean, not in good employees, but taking those ideas and incorporating them into our business. Acquisitions, like you mentioned earlier, our business, we've gone through 3 acquisitions in the last 3 years, and going through those without having someone to leverage network with would have been really difficult. There's plenty of people we met not through this peer group, but they happen to be in this peer group that have done acquisitions on their own, and being able to talk to them and use them as a resource is really a big contributor to that. So, and then even I think back in our other peer group, Lars and he did a presentation on how he scaled his business 1.5 years, 2 years ago. And even that, we were in the midst of our scaling there, and something like that is really valuable to be able to see how others got to where they are, see the journey they took to scale their business. In Lars's case, learn from his mistakes, and then improve upon them. So I would say that, not just outside of this peer group, but just in general, having a group of peers that you can talk to. That's one thing the MSC network has done a really good job of facilitating for us. But so I would attribute a lot of our success in scaling to that peer group network.
I was certainly not a big believer in networking. Every time I hear the word networking, I just want to drown myself. However, that said, being involved with the MSC advisory board, I think that's what Tony was referring to, and actually meeting you guys directly. It provided a lot of support in things that we were going to try. I wouldn't. I know this is being recorded, so I even hesitate saying this, but I've learned quite a bit even from you guys directly on what to do and what not to do. But that's usually my area of expertise of ideas that don't work. Just hearing how I remember what Tony was talking about. I even forgot actually we did it, but we sat down and talked about how we as a company with Calgary Lock and Safe scaled, and right at a granular level, because there was other companies in the group that were kind of at that 8 or 9 person stage in business. And we've talked about at length about 17 or 18 people is right where a business sits before it needs a second level of management. Mm-hmm. And then that jump from 17 to 30 is like a snap of the finger, and it just happens. Because I know our industry, our uniqueness is there's generally not a lack of supply. It's scaling a business to meet that demand. Mm-hmm. I said lack of supply, I meant lack of demand. And that's what we've had to battle through. And that's how others have scaled up and down is really kind of the meat of where our peer industry group started, I guess, if we go back to that. Because I think that was the first conversation we had, Tony, a couple of years ago.
Yeah. Yep.
I think that was like the scaling factor and how other companies scaled up and scaled down and what not to do was the kind of the premise of starting this group.
No, it's been very helpful, and just because it is being recorded, I do want to say that I have learned a significant amount from both of you guys through conversation, and I appreciate the openness and sharing. I know that through joking, a lot of times we don't like to attribute anything that we've done to anybody else, but I appreciate you guys helping out and being willing to be open and transparent. I think it is the only businesses that we have ever been in a position where we felt comfortable and transparent to literally open up the books and say, this is what's going on, and we want to continue to get better. And I think that there's massive value in that.
Yeah, I remember our kind of where this kind of concept, or at least our little group together, came together. We were in Texas because we walked out the back door and you got us to hop on those scooter things. And I remember we were all dressed up. Like I remember I was in a suit and we were on these scooters flying down the road. And
you know what? I remember now, Tony had a hard time parking his scooter in Texas. That's where a lot of that started from. I never even thought about that. But anyway, sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you.
Yeah. So I think you and I went in for coffee while Tony parked his scooter. But we went in there and just started just kind of chatting about, this is what we're going through. And it was like, really? We are too. It's like, no kidding. And and that was just kind of we kind of stumbled across it. And even now we're talking like, hey, we're working on this. Mm-hmm. And Jed's like, yeah, you mean like this? And you show me you've already done it. It's like, man, why aren't we having these conversations more often? Right. Like we're also different in our companies and locations and everything, but we're doing very, very similar things. And it's just so much easier when you have, the hindsight of somebody else to guide you.
Well, I would echo that. Texas was very interesting because it was, I think we can all say this. We've been to conferences and business meetings and sat on advisory boards and all that. And you sit down and people say, how are things going? How's business? Oh, it's great. We're busy. Or no, it's not great. We're not busy. And that is the depth of the conversation. It's great. Yeah, we're up 12%. Oh, we're down 13%. Whatever, And that was kind of one of those conversations where I was like, well, this is, things are okay, but also here are the things that are not okay. And here are the things that are really just kind of a struggle point. And then you say, okay, well, here's some commonalities. And one of the things I did want to point out very clearly, and maybe we should have said this at the beginning of the conversation instead of the end, but when we talk about peer groups, we're not talking about networking to hand out business cards to try to get business from each other, because none of us are getting business from each other. This is all, internal bettering of your business, not trying to sell somebody something by handing business cards out in a networking group, which is, I think, what you were talking about earlier, Lars.
Yeah, it's certainly not a referral group. Like I guess in the most barbaric view, we are competitors.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We don't really cross paths a lot in North Carolina and Alberta, but I guess we are competitors. I know saying that, I wanted to bring this up because one of the biggest hesitations, doing some small business consulting before I was in this industry and working with entrepreneurs and sitting on boards with entrepreneurs, one of the biggest fears and the most, beginner mindset is I don't want to share the idea because the idea will be,
pillaged
stolen.
from you, yeah. Yep.
Yeah, exactly. Somebody's going to take it. And I can tell you this with 100% certainty. Ideas are easy. Actually pulling them off and implementing them, like anyone listening that has any entrepreneurial spirit, they'll just smile at this. Yeah, ideas are easy. Making them come to fruition is very challenging. And that's another area I really like this group for, is because all these ideas, we're tossing them out there and it's like, oh yeah, we've done this. Here, let me send you something that, this makes sense. Or, oh, that's Uncle Glenn. It occurred to me that this is a terrible idea. It's the ideas, don't worry, your ideas won't be stolen, because if you want ideas, I got lots of them. I'll just give them to you for free. If you can pull them off, all the power to you.
It is nice to see too in our group the amount of ideas that we do put into practice. I think at the beginning of the call, a lot of people were focused on marketing, and Chad and Loc-Doc have a lot of expertise in that area. And it was interesting to see the level of marketing within the peer group increase over time, and see the results of that. Now I look around on social media, and people in the peer group that I follow on social media, you see their marketing get better and better and better. And I think that's a nice thing to see out of a peer group, is actually see some of the ideas that you talk about actually put into practice.
Yeah, most definitely. It's interesting. So ideas are easy, but execution takes skill, right? That's Gary Vee says this a lot, and that's one of the reasons why he shares all of this information. He's like overly transparent. I'll tell you everything. I'll tell you exactly what to do. 99% of you will never implement it. So I have no fear of competition at that point, because you're not going to implement it. So yeah, we can come up with ideas all day long, but it is going to take someone with skill and determination to actually execute them, and that makes a big difference. And with the right group of people, it can hold you accountable and give you that motivation to actually go and figure out how to execute it. But, to that point, there's been so many conversations in our group that have come around to, okay, this is a great idea. Now we got to figure out how to make it happen, So we can talk up the idea all day long. Figuring out the execution side is definitely the next phase of advancement there. Well, very cool. I want to be mindful of time. I know, Tony, you have a meeting to get to, and we don't want you to be late because you have pride yourself on being on time. Lars, thank you very much for being here today. You look absolutely sharp in that tie and jacket. I mean, very Canadian of you.
Too bad he had to take some extra time to put that on and be late to the meeting to make it happen. It would have been nice if he was here at 11 o'clock.
I figure if I'm going to spend time with my friends here on a podcast as renowned as this, you got to get cleaned up and look your best, and nothing says that like wearing a tie.
There you go. It's well said from the Canadian. Hey, guys, for real, thank you very much for your time today.
Yeah,
Look forward to seeing you soon. Well, hey, thanks again, guys, for joining me today. It was an absolute blast. Always great to chat with you. If this is your first time watching or listening to the podcast, we have so many other episodes for you. And actually, coming up next week, it's our 100th episode of Season 2-ish, Season 2 and 3. And we have a special guest with us, Jesse Cole from the Savannah Bananas. He's an author. He's been mentioned in countless business books, and he's going to be our special guest next week on the podcast. So please make sure that you subscribe so you don't miss it. It's a brand new episode every Tuesday morning at 9 a.m., and you can sign up for it. You can subscribe at locdoc.net/podcast. That's exactly how you do it, locdoc.net/podcast, and you can subscribe there. If this is your first time, we definitely invite you to join us again. All of the episodes are available on video format as well, so you can see Lars's mustache and all of those wonderful things by simply going to the website, or you can go to Facebook or YouTube and search for Loc-Doc and Podcast, and it'll come right up, and you can see all of the episodes there. Thank you very much for joining us, and we look forward to seeing you next time right here on the Coffee Break Podcast.